Allon Books presents Necie and the Apples, written by Shawn Lamb. This presentation is copyrighted 2023. No portion of this presentation can be used or reproduced without written consent of the copyright owner.
The King's Children, Book 1, Necie and the Apples, written by Shawn Lamb, narrated by Shawn Lamb. The King's Children is based upon characters from the epic young adult fantasy series Allon, take place during the early years of the children of King Ellis, between books 2 and 3. Necie and the Apples. Chapter 1. The Harvest Festival. The Harvest Festival at Allon was a time many looked forward to celebrating. The hard work of gathering the crops called for rejoicing before preparing for winter. People from across the 12 provinces came to Waldron Castle to celebrate. The enormous royal castle sat in the middle of the plain, located in mid-Essex, which is the centralmost province of Allon. The walls rose 15 feet high and ran from the gatehouse at the entrance to the massive square turrets at each corner intersection. For almost a mile, large lampstands lined the main road to the castle. Each had 5 points of light. Rolling hills and forests surrounded the plain, with a few patches of dense forest dotting the landscape. Colorful tents, flags, banners, game booths, and merchants stretched as far as the eye could see. They came to offer their best to King Ellis, his family, those of the royal court, and for trade. Of course, nothing took place until King Ellis declared the festival officially opened. The royal children waited anxiously for their father's formal declaration. The festival offered them the opportunity to play and participate unhindered by royal rules. 11-year-old Prince Nigel was the eldest of the king's children and the only son. His 3 sisters, Ellen, Tristine, and Necie, ranged in age from 10 to 6. Necie was the youngest. At age 8, Tristine imitated Nigel by wearing pants and doublets. Being a royal princess, she couldn't learn from the mortals employed by her father to teach her brother. Instead, she mimicked Nigel when he practiced with a sword or took private lessons from Armis and Wren. Armis was her guardian overseer, and Wren the famed guardian huntress. Each of the royal children had a guardian overseer. Allon's god Jarell created the immortal guardians to protect and serve the mortals. Guardians stood very tall, between 7 to 7.5 feet. The tallest and the strongest were the warriors. And 2 guardian warriors, Mahon and Armis, followed Tristine and Necie as they wandered about the fair. Along with being very tall, the guardians had different color eyes than mortals. Armis's eyes were a bright chestnut brown, while Mahon's a light blue. Their eyes also were very bright, almost shiny. Each warrior had a sword and a dagger. For the day, Nicie's simple dress was suitable for play. Tristine didn't look at all princess-like, more like a tomboy. She even pulled her hair back in a braid and not loose like Nicie's brown hair. They moved through the crowd to head for the gaming area. This meant walking through the food tents and merchant booths. "What do you want to do first? Play or try the caramel apples?" asked Necie. She was almost beside herself with glee. "Oh, I'm not sure," began Tristine. "There's so much to do. I will try the archery booth. Wren says I might be good enough this year to win a prize." "I think I want a caramel apple first," said Necie. "No surprise there. You love apples." "Maybe you should ask Master Harris to make you some," said Mahon, about the head cook at Waldron. "Then they won't be a special treat if he does," said Necie. "Can't argue with that," said Armis. He and Mahon laughed. A line already formed at the candy maker's booth. Necie had trouble seeing if any caramel apples were on display. She tugged on Mahon's uniform to get his attention. "Are there any apples?" He picked her up. Are 5 enough to satisfy you? The apple treats were a special caramel coating, and they were arranged on a platter. I, but I can only have one at a time. Mamma will get mad if I eat any more. Ah, the little princess, said the candy maker. He was a gray-haired, cheery fellow. He waved at Necie and fetched a caramel apple off the tray. Just for you. He reached up and over the table. With Mahon's long arms, the guardian could hold Necie and reach over the heads of everyone to get the apple from the merchant. She took a big bite. The caramel smeared on her face and around her mouth. Mahon chuckled. I think I'll hold you till you finish, or you won't look where you're going while you're walking and eating. He took a coin from his belt and tossed it to the merchant. Thank you. I'll have more for you tomorrow, princess, said the candy maker. She didn't answer for eating. As they left the booth, she smoked with her mouth full. You have to try the ones, Tristine. The apples are really good this year. Maybe later. Right now, I'm going to the archery booth. Something tells me she's too busy to watch, said Armis. We'll be along when she's done, said Mahon. Necie just nodded as she focused on eating the apple. Tristine and Armis turned right at the end of the lane. Let's find a place out of the way so you can eat. Mahon weaved through the crowd of mortals. Being so tall, he easily found a spot underneath the shade tree at the edge of a large grove. The leaves were beginning to turn brilliant fall colors. Only a few lay on the ground. He set Necie down, and she kept eating as if nothing happened. Nigel arrived. He looked like their mother, Queen Shannon, with golden brown hair and blue eyes. Mortal's eyes were not as bright as guardian eyes. Behind Nigel came Avatar, his guardian warrior overseer. Avatar's silver eyes resembled a shiny sword. Well, what is this? Asked Nigel. Eating so soon after breakfast? He teased Necie and tossed a wink to Mahon. I think her lips are too full and sticky from caramel to speak, said Avatar. Are not, she slurred an attempt to answer. The caramel covered her mouth and fingers. Nigel laughed. Well, you better clean up when you're done so Mama doesn't see you and the evidence of eating sweets so early in the day. She swallowed before speaking. She knows I like apples. These are my favorite. Beside, it's the festival. I can do what I want. Oh, don't say that too loudly, warned Nigel. This may be a time for fun, but not disobedience. She looked stricken. I'm only having this one, so don't be mean or tell. Nigel assumed a serious expression. This made Necie pout and flash her big brown eyes up at him. Please, you're my favorite brother. I'm your only brother. Angus wouldn't tell. Nigel frowned. He's our cousin. She continued gazing up at him with pleading eyes until he weakened. Oh, all right. But no more sweets until after supper. Too many are not good for you. I promise I won't. All right. Now, where is Tristine? She's supposed to be with you. Archery! Came the mumbled word as Necie again chomped on the apple. Nigel didn't understand, so Mahon translated. The archery booth. The prince nodded, then spoke firmly to Mahon. Don't indulge her, and bring it to the pavilion when she's done. Mahon bowed his head in acknowledgment. Aye, Highness. End of chapter 1. Necie and the Apples. Chapter 2. A Horse for Uncle Darius. Tristine won several rounds of the archery game and a few prizes. She handed them to Armis to hold. Among her winnings was a pair of arm bracers. Being adult size, the braces were too large to fit her. She would keep them to wear when she got bigger. Her brother stood to one side with the rest of the onlookers. Nigel, did you see me win? She asked. I did. Now I think it's time to help the others have a chance. We need to attend the horse show. She left the bow at the booth to join him in walking to the main area. I'm getting better, Aye, you are. However, you left Necie alone. Remember what father said about letting her wander by herself? How can she wander off with Mahon watching her? The same way you slip away from Armis. She frowned. I'm not that bad. Armis's loud cough drew their attention. I'm not, she insisted to the guardian, and I don't do it to be mean or anything. Then why do you sneak away from me? Asked Armis. She shrugged. I just like being by myself sometimes, I guess. There you are! Ellen hurried over to confront Tristine. Although 10 years old, Ellen appeared every inch a princess in her royal day gown and pampered brown hair. Of the sisters, she was often called the prettiest. Tristine acted the tomboy, and Necie cute and sweet. I've been looking everywhere for you. Father wants you and Necie to join us for the horse show. We're supposed to help him choose a new horse for Uncle Darius's birthday. We're on our way to the pavilion, said Nigel. Where's Necie? Ellen asked Tristine. With Mahon. You're supposed to stay with her. Morella, guardian warrior with bright amber eyes, was Ellen's overseer. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Peace. You know she's safe with Mahon. He'll bring her to the pavilion in time. Now come, we don't want to be late. King Ellis and Queen Shannon sat in the royal pavilion to watch the main game and events of the festival. For most celebrations, the royal couple wore fine, noble clothes. Today, King Ellis dressed more casual to participate in sport. At age 33, he cut a handsome figure with golden hair and bright blue eyes. Only a year younger, Queen Shannon wore a costume for the festival in a cross between a gown and pants so she could enjoy the games as well. She was known throughout Allon for her expertise with a bow. Very few mortals could match her skill. However, when presiding over the event, the king and queen wore their crowns. In the pavilion with them sat Darius, Duke of Allon, and uncle to the royal children. Beside Darius sat his wife, Arista. Standing next to her was their son, 7-year-old Angus. Behind the king's throne waited Kell, the captain of the Guardians. He was the most handsome and powerful of the immortal beings, with black hair and beautiful, brilliant gold eyes. Beside the queen's chair stood Vidar, the premier guardian hunter and queen's protector. His eyes shone like highly polished copper. Nigel, Ellen, and Tristine arrived at the pavilion. You're late, said Ellis with a hint of annoyance in his voice. Sorry, father. The guardians had to clear a path through the crowd coming to see the show, said Nigel. Ellis's fatherly frown of suspicion turned to Tristine. Where's Necie? I'm here. Necie ran up the steps of the pavilion. Being winded, she pointed back, took a deep breath, and said, I got separated in the crowd. Really? Ellis glanced to her overseer, then back to Necie. Mahon could have carried you. She balked, sheepish, and didn't reply. Father, began Nigel. He stopped when Ellis put up a hand. With a beckoning finger, Ellis motioned for Necie to approach. He leaned forward in the chair to speak to her privately. The truth. I did get lost in the crowd trying to get here. Mahon found me and carried me to the end of the lane. I ran the rest of the way here. So you left Mahon. She is so small, sire, she can dart in between people and places I can't, said Mahon. Ellis hid a smile at the guardian's statement. He returned to questioning Necie. And why were you not with your brothers and sisters when they arrived? She pouted and lowered her head to admit, I was eating. Caramel apple, no doubt. Her head came up in childish surprise. How did you know? Ellis took a finger and wiped off the caramel stain on her dress near the collar. You didn't clean up very well. I'm sorry. I promised Nigel it was the only one I had this morning. Ellis sat back to look at his son, trying not to smile. What else did you promise Nigel? Not to eat any more sweets until after supper. Nigel groaned, Nicie's answer. At least she's honest, said Darius. Ellis looked to Shannon. Again he fought a smile. What shall we do with our honest and messy child? He asked. Tristine hasn't been honest. She was supposed to watch Necie, but went to the archery booth instead, said Ellen. Oh? Asked Shannon. Angered by the accusation, Tristine spoke in defense. I haven't lied. I haven't said anything. And Mahon was holding her as she ate. He said he would bring her to the booth when he finished. That is indeed what happened, sire, said Mahon. The little princess was quite engaged in eating the apple. We can tell by her dress, said Ellis. But why is your uniform still clean? Asked Shannon. I found a spot for her to eat undisturbed, Majesty, said Mahon. Necie tried to wipe the numerous caramel apple stains off her dress. Ellen leaned down to help her. I think you need to change. Indeed, began Ellis. So after the show, you will take Necie back to her room to change before any more festival activities. And remain with her the rest of the day, added Shannon. The statement surprised Ellen. Why? Shannon responded. You accused Tristine of abandoning Necie and lying. She did neither. So since you made a false claim, Necie will be your responsibility. Ellen frowned in anger, yet made a curtsy to her mother. Aye, mamma. Now assume your places for the show, said Ellis. Necie moved beside Angus, with Tristine next to her. Nigel stood next to Ellis's chair, and Ellen took her place beside Shannon. Ellis signaled for the show to begin. In order, horses paraded through the marked-off area to display tricks or for the handler to explain the animal's good qualities. Tristine chatted with excitement about certain horses. Sometimes she spoke to Darius, other times to no one in particular. Necie became distracted about tidying up her dress. Angus tried to encourage her or responded to Tristine's comments. Nigel leaned close to Ellis. How can we choose without Uncle knowing? Tristine's excitement may give it away. Ellis chuckled. There isn't much that escapes Darius's notice, but we'll manage. Just keep a sharp eye on the horses and tell me your choice later. Ooh, who owns that one? Asked Tristine. A nobleman rode a beautiful golden horse with a flowing white mane and tail. The horse proudly pranced, with its neck arched and feet lifting high off the ground. That's Balin. He's Lord Allard's pride stallion, said Darius. Father, when can I have a horse like him? She asked with excitement. When you're older and big enough to handle one. For now your pony will serve. I'm better with a bow, so I'll improve enough to ride Balin. Ellis laughed at Tristine's confident boast. I am, she insisted, and I won prizes, including archery bracers. She moved to Armis, and he gave her the braces he tucked in his belt. She approached the throne to show Ellis. See, they're too big, but I'll grow into them. He examined the well-crafted leather shooting bracers. He passed them to Shannon for her inspection, then said, Nice. I was not laughing in ridicule, rather agreement. I do know how hard you practice. However, Balin needs expert handling. Even Uncle Darius and I have trouble controlling him. Only Lord Allard is capable. Tristine frowned, so he added, I don't doubt your words. You are very determined when you set your mind to something. He held her arm to draw her closer and speak confidentially. Remember, this is for you to help me choose a horse for Uncle's birthday. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot. He smiled and winked. Now watch the horses with that in mind. She returned his smile, nodded, and resumed her place next to Darius. The entire show lasted 2 hours. When finished, Lord Allard and General Ian of the army drew their horses to rein in front of the pavilion. Allard, the nobleman who showed off his prize stallion, was hard to miss with his strawberry blonde hair. Even at age 44, he looked younger, with a clean-shaven face. The older general appeared every inch the perfect soldier. Well done, gentlemen, said Ellis. Each year you impress me with your excellent horses, my lord, he said to Allard. Thank you, sire. "Aye, such a beautiful horse!" Tristine moved to the edge of the pavilion and reached out to touch Balon's muzzle. "Easy, princess," warned Allard. He sat ready to steady his horse. To everyone's surprise, Balon didn't move, and he accepted her touch on his muzzle. Then, in further surprise, the horse gently nibbled on her hand. "Well, I'll be," said Allard. Shannon smiled. "Why are you surprised, my lord? She is my daughter, and has my way with animals." "Indeed, madam." "Aye, but let's not press our luck." Ellis rose to steer Tristine from Balon. The stallion tossed its head with an angry snort and stretched its neck out to Tristine. "Well, he likes her," said Allard. "I like him. He's a nice horse." She petted Balon again. Ellis and Darius laughed. Darius said, "Balon has thrown your father and I when we tried to ride him." "Well, when I'm bigger, I'll ride him." "Well, that'll be a few years." Ellis nudged Tristine back to her place. "Before the show, I separated 20 new horses for the cavalry, sire," began General Ian. "They are assembled in the corral awaiting your inspection." "Only after Archimedes chooses the best horse for the Gerelians," said Allard, with a chuckle. Ellis grinned. "I would expect the vicar to select first, and the finest horses for the holy knights. Darius, accompany the general to the corral. I'll be along shortly." The general dismounted to escort the duke from the pavilion. "Not exactly a subtle way to dismiss him, so we can make our choice," said Shannon. Ellis laughed. "So which one did you like?" he asked Nigel. "The buckskin mare Captain West rode during the cavalry demonstration. She has spirit, but looks well trained for battle." "Ellen?" She shrugged at her father, looking indifferent. "A horse is a horse, so anyone is fine." "Christine?" "Oh, I agree with Nigel." Ellis looked to Necie and Angus. "Which one did you like?" "Necie?" Necie balked as she again fussed with her dress. "What?" "The horse for Uncle's birthday present," began Nigel. He gently prodded her arm. "You liked the buckskin too, didn't you?" "I suppose." "She said she thought the black mane and tail were pretty on the buckskin," said Angus. Ellis smiled. "Do you think your father will like the horse?" "Aye, uncle." Then it's settled. Allard, have the buckskin brought to the royal stables. "Aye, sire," he said and left. "Can I change now? I can't get the sticky candy off my dress," said Necie. Ellis nodded, so Ellen took Necie by the hand. "Come along. We'll get you cleaned and changed so we can enjoy the fair." Morel and Mahon followed the girls from the pavilion to head back to Waldron Castle. Necie and the Apples, Chapter 3. Escape from Ellen. After she changed clothes, Necie hurried to keep up with Ellen as they left the castle to head back to the fairgrounds. "Stop walking so fast! You took too long to change, and I missed all the morning events and lunch banquet. You're not the only one who looked forward to having fun today," said Ellen. Mahon scooped Necie up in his arms. "Lead on, princess," he said to Ellen. With a satisfied smile and proud tilt of her head, Ellen made her way directly to the cloth and dress merchants' tents and booths. The excitement Necie had for the caramel apples, Ellen showed for the pretty gowns and fine material. There were so many brightly colored ribbons and hats to be examined that she could barely contain her pleasure. Also having brown hair, Necie became Ellen's little mannequin for matching colors, ribbons, or bonnets. The only difference between the sisters, other than some height, was Ellen's blue eyes compared to Nicie's brown eyes. "How much longer? It's getting late and I'm hungry," complained Necie. Ellen held up a shawl next to Nicie's face. "I'm almost done. Here, hold this." She gave Necie the shawl. She reached for a bonnet to put on Nicie's head. Being too large, it slipped over Nicie's eyebrows. "It's too big." "For you, but it'll fit me fine. I want to see if the color matches." Ellen stopped Necie from removing the bonnet. "I can't see. It's not covering my eyes." Aye, that will do. Ellen plucked the bonnet off Niecy's head and snatched the shawl. Send these to the castle, she told the merchants. As you say, princess. Can I get something to eat now? It must be supper time. Not yet. There's one more booth. Ellen ushered Necie away while Morel paid the merchant. At the last booth, Ellen picked up a shiny, soft piece of red fabric. Ooh, I like this. It would make an excellent gown for a special occasion, said the merchant. How much? 10 talents for the entire bulk of fabric, princess. I'll take it. Morel leaned down to detain Ellen. You've spent all your allowance. Father won't deny me. Go, ask him for 10 talents. Say I need it for a dress for Uncle's birthday party. My duty is to stay with you, he said. Your duty is to do what I say. Besides, Mahon is here. Morel scowled with displeasure but left. Psst, psst. Necie heard what sounded like hissing. Psst, Necie. She carefully looked back. Angus peeked out from the edge of the booth. He waved her over. She hesitated in moving when Ellen placed a fabric against her for examination. No, that won't do. Ellen picked up the sample piece of red cloth she liked and held it against Necie. A large smile appeared. Aye, that will look grand. She attempted to pick up the bulk fabric, but it was too heavy. Take it, she instructed Mahon. Go on. Morel will return with the money. Psst, came Angus's beckoning call and second wave. When Mahon stepped between Necie and Ellen to fetch the material, Necie left to join Angus. I've been trying to get you away from her since the third booth, he said. Good, because I'm hungry and I'm tired of being her little dress-up doll. Angus snatched Nicie's hand and they raced off behind the booths. Unaware of Nicie's departure with Angus, Ellen found Sir Ribbon. She turned to where Necie stood, only she wasn't there. Morel returned. Here's the money, princess. But the king is not happy and said this is all for today. Ellen nodded as she was still distracted and looking around. Just pay him. She stepped around the other side of the table. Necie, she straightened and looked displeased at Mahon. Is she hiding behind you to avoid me? He glanced over his shoulder. No. She inquired of the merchant, Is my sister under your table? The merchant looked. No, princess. Ellen fought back a sudden panic. Necie, where are you hiding? Come out and we won't do any more shopping. I promise. We'll go eat. I'll even get you a candy apple. Necie, this isn't funny. Mahon put the cloth down to search the merchant's tent. Morel also checked the perimeter. He shook his head at Mahon when not seeing Necie. Ellen grew fearful at the reaction of the guardians. Oh, where did my sister go? Mahon took a deep breath and closed his eyes. For several anxious moments, Ellen watched him. She knew he used his heavenly senses to search for Necie. Well? She asked when he opened his eyes. I don't sense any danger. We have to find her. We will, he said with certainty. Let's split up, he told Morel, and they left the tent. Ellen and Morel searched the tents and booths in the dress merchant's area. She grew more anxious with each unsuccessful attempt to find Necie. Oh, where could she be? She said she was hungry. She may have gone to find some food and not be around here, Morel said. Oh, aye, said Ellen in relief. Caramel apples. Where is the candy maker? We passed the tent on the way to the archery booth earlier, he said. Meanwhile, Angus and Necie found Master Harris at the cooking area by following the wonderful smell of food. Harris was a round, happy man. He stood behind a long table where they prepared the food. Master Harris? We're hungry, said Angus. Indeed, my lord. Ah, little princess, I managed to get a whole bushel of apples just so I could make your special treats. Necie smiled. But food first, he said, or the queen will think I spoil you too much. He turned and barked orders to fetch food for the young nobles. A distant rumbling sound caught their attention. Darkening clouds formed on the horizon. What's that? a nervous Necie asked. Harris now held the plates of food. Looks like a storm is coming. Necie jumped at the second clap of thunder. The storm was still some distance away. I don't like storms. They're too noisy. Harris kindly smiled. There's a tent yonder where you can sit. He led them to where several soldiers sat at the only table. Let the princess and young lord sit, he said to them. After the soldiers left, he put the plates down. He smiled when Nisi became anxious about the storm cloud. There's plenty of time to eat before it reaches us. Now I'll fetch you some cider. Angus started eating, but Nisi didn't. He said it won't reach us till we're done. Angus tried to sound encouraging, but she kept staring at the horizon. Harris returned with 2 cups of cider. The storm appears to be heading in a different direction, Princess. He winked at her. I'll bring an apple tart for dessert when you're finished. Nisi relaxed and ate. She was so hungry that she gobbled down her food. Harris arrived with half an apple tart in a tin and 2 forks. Oh, you were hungry. All I had was a caramel apple this morning. Oh, then the tart might be too many sweets for you. He started to move away. She grabbed his arm. I'm still hungry. He smiled and set down the tin. I see your brother yonder. Maybe he would like a piece also. No, don't tell Nigel. I'll get in trouble. But he began to object when Angus grabbed the tart tin and Nisie's hand. They ran off to the trees. Princess! They ignored Harris and ran further into the grove. They went far enough so no one would see them. Nigel won't find you here, said Angus. Oh, I didn't mind running from Ellen, but it doesn't seem right with Nigel. You don't want to get in trouble, do you? No, but I promised him I wouldn't eat any more sweets until after dinner. You ate a good meal that Master Harris cooked. She widely grinned. So I didn't break my word. Angus sat down with the tin in his lap. We'll eat the tart, then find Nigel. Only be careful and don't get anything on your dress. You don't want Uncle Ellis to know again. Meanwhile, Ellen stomped her foot, annoyed at not finding Nisi at the candy maker's booth. We'll have to search every food tent, she said. Mahon may have found her by now, said Morel. And if he hasn't, I can't be discovered without her. And at dusk, Father said we're to meet to go back home. It's almost dusk. A thunderclap startled Ellen. Oh no, Nisi hates storm, especially at night. It's still a couple of miles away. She probably returned to the safety of the castle rather than stay outside. We'll head in that direction and stop at the food booths along the way. Morel took her by the shoulders to steer Ellen away from the candy maker's booth. They stopped at 3 more food vendors, but no luck. They hadn't seen Nisi. At another clap of thunder, rain began falling. Oh, not now! Not till we find her! Find who? Nigel! Ellen turned pale with fright at sight of him. Tristine accompanied Nigel, and both were followed by the guardian overseers Armis and Avatar. Her reaction made Nigel suspicious. Ellen? Where is Nisi? Asked Tristine. Ellen first got angry at the question, but broke due to anxiety. I don't know. We were at a dress booth looking at material, but when I turned around to try a ribbon on her, she was gone. You lost her? Tristine's hand went to her hips. You accused me of leaving her alone. Ellen's temper flared, but she became over anxious with worry. I didn't lose her. She left. Even Mahon doesn't know where she went. Where is Mahon? Asked Armis. We split up to search for her, said Morel. I believe with the growing dark and the storm coming, she returned to the castle. We are heading there now. Ellen seized Nigel's arm. Please, don't tell Mama or Father. We're supposed to be meeting them at the pavilion right now, he said. Aye, they'll know something's wrong when we don't arrive, said Tristine. Not if we find her. Please, Ellen pleaded to her brother. Nigel frowned as he considered what to do. The wind picked up and the rain grew harder. She won't like this storm, said Tristine to Nigel. Aye, he agreed. Let's hope she returned to the castle and isn't out in this. I'll run ahead to see if she is at the castle, said Avatar. Guardians could outrun horses, and he took off at a tremendous speed. When they turned to follow him, Ellen had to hike up her skirt to keep pace. Nigel and Tristine, wearing pants, easily outran Ellen. Just shy of the bridge leading to the castle, a voice called, "Nigel!" Their parents were on horseback riding towards them. Mahon, Kell, and Vidar ran beside the horses. "Oh no," he said to his sisters. "They know." Ellis confronted Ellen. "Have you found Necie yet?" She bit her lip before replying. "No, sir. We think with the storm she may have gone inside. That's where we're going to look." She pointed to Waldron and fought her distress. "Avatar ran on ahead," said Nigel. "Mahon?" asked Shannon. The guardian closed his eyes, and for a moment everyone waited. Finally his eyes opened and he shook his head. "I don't think she's inside, Majesty." Avatar rushed back over the bridge to join them. "Any sign of Necie?" asked Alice. "No, sire," said Avatar. "But it doesn't mean a mortal as small as the princess can't slip past unnoticed." Shannon dismounted. "Nigel, go with your father to search the plain and festival grounds. Vidar helped them. Ellen, Tristine, and I will go inside." Ellen was almost on the verge of tears. "I'm sorry. I don't know how she slipped away." "We'll discuss it after we find her," said Ellis. Nigel mounted. "What about torches? It's almost dark." Avatar drew his sword and spoke the ancient language of the Guardians. The entire length of his sword glowed brighter than any torch. "Lead on," Ellis told Avatar. He, Nigel, Kell, Vidar, and Mahon followed Avatar back to the fairgrounds with his sword lighting the way. Necie and the Apples, Chapter 4. Separated in the Storm. Necie screamed when thunder roared and rain beat down so hard it poured through the cover of the trees. The wind blew with tremendous force as a full-blown storm descended upon the castle plain. "Let's get back to the tents!" Angus aided Necie to her feet. They barely took half a dozen steps when deafening thunder cracked. Lightning struck a tree and sent a branch crashing to the ground in front of them. Both were knocked to their feet and lay stunned. Angus stirred first and sat up. "Necie?" She groaned, so he crawled to where she lay. "Are you hurt?" "I don't think so." More thunder and lightning. She screamed and buried her head in their hands. "We have to get out of these trees and back to Waldron." Angus helped Necie to stand and moved around the fallen branch. The wind howled so loud they had to shout to hear each other. "I see people over there," said Angus. "What?" "People over there." "Where?" He didn't reply, rather pulled her in the direction. They emerged from the trees into a mass of people running for cover from the raging storm. A few were on horseback, others pushed two-wheeled carts in an effort to get out of the rain. In trying to make their way through the crowd, Angus and Necie became separated. She stopped, frantic and turning around and trying to find him. "Angus!" she called. The storm and crowd drowned her voice. She screamed at more thunder and ran in the direction she thought led to Waldron. Unfortunately, she ended up back at the table where she and Angus sat to eat. No one was there. No Master Harris and no soldiers. The table remained, but without a tent. A covered wagon waited with a horse hitched to it. At more thunder, Necie dove under the table. Thunder and lightning were so fierce and frightening that she didn't feel safe. No, the safest place during a storm was under her covers in her bedroom with Mahon standing beside her. The castle was too far to run in the storm, and she didn't know where Mahon was, or if he could hear her if she called for him. She had to find a place to hide. She crawled to the edge and peeked out from under the table. The back door of the covered wagon stood open. She screwed her eyes shut at a flash of lightning and placed her hands over her ears in anticipation of the coming thunder. After it roared, she scrambled out from the table, ran to the wagon, and quickly climbed inside. Drenched, cold, and frightened, she huddled behind barrels at the farthest end away from the door. At the onset of the storm, Master Harris and his staff scrambled for shelter. He ordered them to pack up more supplies. Their voices were muffled by the storm, so they had to put their heads together to hear what was said. "Forget the food," said Harris. "Just get the pots, pans, and other supplies and head for the castle. I'll secure the horse and wagon." He just reached the wagon when a soldier arrived. Harris knew the soldier was speaking by moving his lips, but couldn't hear him. "What?" The soldier practically shouted in Harris's ear. "The little princess is missing. The king orders everyone to make a search for her." Harris nodded. "Take my staff to search the grove." The soldier left. Harris shut and locked the wagon door. He raced to the front where the horse started acting up because it was frightened by the storm. When the door slammed shut, Necie dared a glance out from behind the barrels. She moved to the door and became fearful at finding it wouldn't open. "Oh, no! Hello!" The ring grew louder as she banged on the door and shouted, "Anyone there? I'm in here. Please open." She collapsed to her knees and covered her ears at the close, deafening roar of thunder. She again hid behind the barrels. She grabbed an empty sack to cover her head and press it against her ears to lessen the noise. Suddenly, the wagon lurched forward and tossed her about as it gained speed. She bumped her head and lay motionless on the wagon floor. Meanwhile, Ellis and the group arrived at the tent where Ellen said they were before Necie left. Darius stood in front of the closed tent with a very wet, weeping, and upset Angus. General Ian and some soldiers formed a semicircle behind the Duke. The torches flickered as the constant rain threatened to extinguish the light. "Have you found Necie?" asked Darius. "No," said Ellis. "I think Angus has something to tell you about her disappearance." "Oh?" Ellis dismounted to talk to Angus. "We didn't mean it. Honest, uncle, we didn't," the boy sobbed. Ellis knelt and took Angus by the shoulders. "Take a deep breath and tell me what happened." "Necie was hungry and tired of being Ellen's dress-up doll at all these booths. I followed them, and at first chance we snuck away to get something to eat from Master Harris." He pointed in the direction they went. "He gave us a tart after supper, but then he spotted Nigel. We ran because we didn't want Necie to get in trouble for eating more sweets. We found a spot away from the table to eat the tart. Then it started raining with thunder and lightning. It broke a branch. It nearly fell on top of us." His voice grew anxious and he breathed heavy with fright. "Calm down," said Ellis. "Where were you when the branch fell?" "In the grove, eating. We weren't hurt, but we became separated." "We've been searching, sire, but the rain and wind keeps blowing out the torches," said Ian. "The elements won't affect my light or guardian eyesight," said Avatar. Ellis stood. "General, continue to search the perimeter until every last torch is useless. This tent will serve as our command post." He spoke to Avatar and Mahon. "Use your light and senses to find this grove. Nigel, Darius, Vidar, and I will make several passes between here and Waldron Castle, just in case she headed home for safety." "I'm sorry, I'll go." Ellis patted Angus' shoulder. "I know. I'm not angry. I'm just worried for Necie." "So am I." Ellis smiled. "Kel, take him back to Waldron, then join us in searching." Kel stepped beside Angus. The boy sniffled and wiped his face, but his tears mingled with the raindrops streaming down his face. "Hold on, young master," said Kel kindly. Before Angus could ask, they disappeared in a flash of white light. Dimension travel. It's how guardians travel over distances in an instant. Meanwhile, Avatar and Mahon made a loop around the merchant booths. "What are your senses telling you?" asked Avatar, with a raised voice over the driving rain. "Well, that she's close by," replied Mahon, "but not in any danger. In fact, I have yet to sense any danger." "I agree," said Avatar, "but I'm certain the falling branch frightened her." "Aye, storms scare her. If she's still out here, she's probably terrified." Avatar looked at Mahon. "You'd think she'd call for you. True, our ears are better than mortals, But with this loud storm, I'll rely more on sensing her essence than listening for her voice, Mahon said. He stopped at the edge of the trees. I think this may be the grove. He and Avatar entered. Branches swayed in the storm's gale force winds, and leaves swirled past their faces. Avatar held his sword high to enlarge the light. Necie! He called. What, you expect her to hear you in this? Asked Mahon. The wind isn't as loud under the trees as in the open, so it's worth a try. Necie! Mahon joined Avatar in calling her name. He paused at the crack of thunder directly overhead and jumped back when lightning struck the ground in front of them. Debris flew up and spattered all over Mahon. What are you doing? He yelled at Avatar. We don't need your lightning power right now. It's not me, said Avatar. My sword is attracting the lightning. We'll have to proceed without it. Avatar tapped his sword point on the ground. It stopped glowing and he sheathed it. We'll start tracking. Avatar knelt and placed his hand on the ground. There's a lot of movement in taking shelter. Not smart to go under trees in a storm. Oh, and we're being smart, said Mahon. Lightning doesn't bother me. Avatar chuckled at his own joke. This way. He led Mahon through the trees and dense brush to the edge of the grove. Necie was here. Of course she was. This is where I brought her to eat the caramel apple this morning. Well, if her sense is everywhere, it'd be more difficult to track her movements, argued Avatar. What else does a mortal do at a fair but wander? Said Mahon. Well, fine. She's your charge. You track her. Mahon got down on one knee. Jarrell, guide me to Necie. He placed his hand on the ground. After several moments, he frowned and stood. This will be frustrating. Her essence goes back into the trees, toward the parade ground, Waldron, and back, and, well, everywhere. Avatar smirked. We'll just have to take one lead at a time and avoid doubling back. Meanwhile, near Waldron Castle, Master Harris finally got the horse under control. He slowed the wagon to a more reasonable speed. He guided the animal through the main courtyard and around the main building to the kitchen. At the door, a man greeted him. Anything more to be put up for the night? Asked the man. No, just take the horse and wagon to the shed. We'll deal with the supplies in the morning. It's too mean of a night to stay out any longer. The man led the horse and wagon to the shed 10 yards away from the kitchen. Harris moved to the kitchen door but didn't enter when Ellis, Darius, and Nigel pulled their horses to a skidding stop on the wet pavement. Kell and Vidar ran, but not out of breath. Kell rejoined them after seeing to Angus. Master Harris. Aye, sire. I was told that you fed Necie and Angus earlier. Aye, sire, he was sheepish in answering. Don't worry, Angus told me about the tart and running off. But what else can you tell me? The princess was afraid of getting in trouble. I admit I should not have indulged her with sweets. I'll try to do better, sire. But I made certain she ate a good meal first before the tart. Sweets are the least of my worries. Did you see Necie after that? No, sire. We helped with the search until being dismissed by the general to return to Waldron. We do need to feed everybody in the morning. Oh, very well, said Ellis. What now, father? Asked Nigel. Back to the fairgrounds. Harris watched until they were out of sight, then entered the kitchen. After 2 hours, General Ian and the soldiers returned to the merchant tent. The winds picked up and a new downpour drenched them. It's no good, General. The torches are too wet to provide any more light, said a soldier. The king won't be pleased to hear that. But, General, we can't make a proper search without light. Aye. At that moment, Ellis, Darius, Nigel Vidar, and Kell arrived back at the tent. Did you find any sign of her, General? Asked Ellis. No, sire. The torches are so wet that they are past the point of being lit. What about between here and Waldron? Nothing, said Ellis, and no one has seen her at the castle. I fear we're blinded until daylight, sire. Not guardians. Vidar and I will join Avatar and Mahon, said Kell. I hate being idle all night, complained Ellis. Well, despite what Angus said about the fallen branch, I don't sense any injury or danger, sire. She may just be hiding until this passes. Kell tried to sound encouraging. We'll use this tent to wait while you make your search. Ellis went inside, followed by Darius, Nigel, and Ian. Sire, what provisions should I fetch from Waldron for the night? Asked Ian. Nothing. I doubt I'll sleep or eat. Just pray and try not to worry. Father, Cal said he doesn't sense danger or injury. That should count for something, said Nigel. Aye, but until she's safe, I won't feel any better. Kel and Vidar found Avatar and Mahon beside a fallen branch. Any sign of her? Asked Kel. No, but I believe this is the branch Angus mentioned, replied Mahon. Her essence goes this way, said Vidar. The archer ran the direction indicated. The warriors followed until they emerged from a grove into the open space. There were signs of fires, pitched tents, a shelter, along with several tables, benches, and stools. Well, this isn't near any of the merchant tents, said Vidar. No, this is Harris's cooking area, and that is the table where Necie and Angus sat to eat, said Mahon in annoyance. We followed her scents from here to the grove, and that's when we discovered the fallen branch. We've tried not to double back, as her essence leads all around the fairgrounds and to and from Waldron, added Avatar. Remember, began Mahon again, speaking with annoyance, she returned to Waldron to change clothes after the horse show. No one reports seeing her at the castle, began Kell, although Harris confirmed feeding she and Angus. Well, if her essence goes in circles, then she never went beyond the fairgrounds or the castle, said Vidar, which deepens the mystery of why I can't locate her. Mahon indicated the area. There's no place for her to hide out here. So, where would she hide in the castle if she was scared? Vidar asked Mahon. Under her covers. She feels safest in her bed during a storm with me by her side. Well, let's return to the king, said Kell. A night praying may aid in solving this mystery. Necie and the Apples, Chapter 5. After the Storm. Necie stirred, groggy at first, then woke. Everything was dark. Her head hurt a bit, but the darkness troubled her more. She moved to sit up, and her foot kicked something. She felt the object with her hand, a barrel by the round shape and size. Well, this meant she was still in the wagon. She shivered. Her clothes were cold and her hair damp from the storm. For a moment she listened and thought she heard rain. Well, it didn't sound as close or hard, so maybe the bad part of the storm had passed. Not being able to see well, she crawled in the direction she thought led to the door. Feeling the handle, she pulled herself up to her knees and tried to open it. It didn't budge. She banged her fists on the door and called out, "Help! Is anyone there?" She stopped to listen, but only heard rain and a distant rumble of thunder. She shivered more and moved back to where she woke up. She took the sack she used to shield her head and ears and wrapped it around her shoulders. It barely fit like a shawl, so no real help in getting warm. She tried to move around the wagon, but kept bumping into barrels and crates in such a confined space. She did discover a piece of canvas. Well, this would serve better than the sack for warmth. She tried not to cry. "Please, Jarrell, let Mahon or someone find me. I didn't mean to be bad and run away. I got scared by the storm." She sniffled and wiped her nose. She flinched at hearing thunder, though it sounded distant and not too close. Wrapped in a canvas, she tried to settle down. She knocked something over and heard several thud, thud, thud. Whatever fell appeared to be round, at least what shape she could make out in the dim light. She picked one up. By the feel and smell, she realized she held an apple. She took a bite. Yep, an apple. It tasted as good and juicy as the one covered in caramel. She paused in eating, feeling guilty, and looked up. "I did keep my promise to Nigel about not eating sweets until after dinner. You know I did, Jarrell. And I don't know when I'll eat again or when someone will find me. So thank you." She ate the apple. At first light the next morning, Harris emerged from the kitchen. He yawned and stretched. Like most days after a storm, the air smelled fresh and crisp. There were leftover puddles and water dripped from the building. The gray, cloudy morning didn't allow for any sunlight. From behind Harris came sounds of activity from the kitchen. Cooks, scullery maids, and servants all rose before sunrise to prepare a hearty breakfast for the royal family and everyone at the castle. He yawned again, then crossed from the kitchen to the shed. The horse greeted him with a whinny. "And how are you this fine morning, old girl? Sleep well after getting wet?" The horse whinnied again. Harris picked up a bucket containing oats and poured it into the feed trough. He also placed several armfuls of hay alongside the trough for her to chop on. Taking the keys off his belt, he unlocked the wagon door. Opening the door allowed light into the wagon. He saw the barrels, crates, spilled apples, and tiny feet sticking out from under a canvas. "What's this?" He climbed inside. He gently moved the canvas aside to reveal a sleeping Necie. 4 apple cores surrounded her head. He smiled and began laughing. "Little princess!" He touched her shoulder. "Princess!" She stirred and squirmed, her eyes open. "Who are you?" "It's Harris. But I suspect you can't see me well with the light behind me." He helped her to sit up. "Oh, Master Harris, where are we?" "Back at the castle, princess. I reckon you crawled in here during the storm, and no one noticed you, least of all me." He looked back at the door. "I locked you in here, didn't I?" "Are you hurt?" Nisi sniffled. "I'm cold, tired, and my head and tummy hurts." "No doubt. Well, come, I know your parents will be happy to see you." Meanwhile, Ellis paced before the tent. He appeared tired and with a night's worth of whiskers. Darius and Nigel stood around a fire to get warm. The guardians and soldiers assembled, awaiting Ian's orders for searching that day. "Father!" They all turned at the shouting. Christine rode her pony, pushing it in a gallop. Armis jogged alongside. She pulled the pony to a stop. "It's all right! Niecy's been found!" "What? Where?" "In Master Harris's wagon. She spent the night locked in, and he found her this morning." "She must have sought shelter from the storm," said Darius to Ellis. "Which explains why her essence kept confusing me," began Mahon. "She never went further than the castle and the fairgrounds." "I'm surprised Harris didn't find her before now," said Nigel. "It was very chaotic during the storm, and I ordered him and his men to help in the search," said Ian. Ellis laughed, hearty and full of relief. "At least she is well and unharmed." "If you call sniffles and a headache and a tummy ache unharmed," said Tristine. She grinned. "Eldrick is treating her since she slept in wet clothes and ate 4 apples. Gentlemen, let us return to the castle." Ellis mounted his horse. Back at Waldron, Nisi sat propped up in her bed by pillows and cushions. Her hair was now dry. She wore a nightgown and blankets tucked in around her. The guardian physician, Eldrick, stood beside her. Shannon sat on the bed. Ellen, Arista, Angus waited at the foot of the bed. Ellis, Nigel, Darius, and the guardians entered with Tristine. Most showed signs of weathering the storm, with Ellis, Nigel, and Darius looking tired and scruffy. "Well, my little one, you gave us quite a fright," said Ellis. He sat on the bed opposite Shannon. "Now what do you have to say?" "I'm sorry." He smiled and kissed her cheek. "I'm just glad you're safe." "I prayed for Jarrell to keep me safe, and he did, although it was Master Harris who found me, and not Mahon." "I looked everywhere for you," said the guardian. "We all did," said Nigel. She made a pouting frown at her brother. "Are you mad at me for running away from you?" "No, just a bit disappointed that you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth." "But I did keep my promise. I didn't eat the tart until after dinner." "Well, then you had no reason to run from Nigel, did you?" asked Ellis. "That was my fault, not hers, uncle," said Angus. Nisi had a choice. Since she kept her word, she could have stayed. Running off is what caused all this trouble. Ellis turned back to Nisi. By remaining and telling Nigel the truth, all of this could have been avoided. "Aye, sir. I'll do better next time." Ellis smiled and kissed her forehead. "I feel no fever." "No, sire," began Eldrick. "The chill is minor, and can be cured with rest in a warm bed and good hot soup." "And the headache and tummy ache?" Oh, nothing serious, and also curable by bed rest. Shannon spoke to Necie. Now maybe you'll understand why I only let you eat one apple at a time. Too much of a good thing can hurt. Oh, don't mention apples. Necie groaned. She screwed up her face and placed a hand on her stomach. I thought apples were your favorite treat, said Angus. They were, but I don't think any more. She made a sour frown. Unless it's covered in caramel, teased Tristine. Nisi began to smile and winced in a slight stomach pain. That would be a sweet tummy ache. No more apples this season, began Alice. You must learn to control your appetite. Aye, sir. She looked with sheepish eyes at her father. Can I at least go to the fair again? She stopped at hearing thunder. I think the fair will be rained out today, said Alice. Nisi snuggled under the covers. On second thought, I think I'll stay here. The moral of the story, as told in Guardian Wisdom by Mahon. Nisi made a promise to Nigel not to eat sweets until after dinner. She kept her promise. However, fear of getting into trouble for eating more sweets than allowed prevented her from telling Nigel the truth. By acting on her fear, she created more trouble and caused us to look everywhere for her. What would you do if you were Nisi? Have you ever been fearful about telling your parents, brothers, or sisters the truth? Speak to your parents before something like this happens to you. Understand that telling the truth, even when you are afraid, is always better than avoiding it. The End. The King's Children, Book 1, Necie and the Apples. Copyright 2013 by Shawn Lamb.
Original Allon character design and illustrations by Robert Lamb.
All rights reserved. Published by Allon Books.